Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. A few videos ago, we talked about the need when trying to interpret the Bible to zoom out before zooming in. So, in other words, before we really try to examine the meaning of one particular verse, we want to zoom out. We want to look at the big picture of the Bible as a whole first, and then once you get that picture in mind, then you can drop down and look at the big picture of a specific book in the Bible. Okay, again, the Bible's 66 books. You can look at the big picture of that particular book that the verse that you're looking at is in, and then even after you get that big picture, then you can zoom in and look at maybe a chunk of verses and say, okay, what's the big picture from verses 1 to 20? What's going on here? What is this verse that I'm looking at sandwiched in between? What is the discussion going on here? And that's really going to help you in understanding that individual verse. So always big picture is important. And if you want to know more details about that, I encourage you to watch that video. But in this video, I want to give you some helpful tools, some helpful recommendations for resources that's going to aid you in understanding the big picture of the Bible. Because remember, the Bible was not written in a vacuum. It was written in real time, in real history, among real cultures and languages and socio-political situations and economic and religious situations. And it can be very helpful to read books outside the Bible that help paint this historical picture of what was going on when the Bible was written. And I just want to give you 5 quick recommendations that I think will help you in your study. The first one is Merrill C. Tenney, the New Testament Survey. Anytime you see the word survey, what it means is big picture. All right, it's just the big picture of the New Testament. So he does a really good job of talking about the religious situation, both among the Greco-Romans and also among the Jews, okay, that really had a heavy influence on, basically what Christianity had to deal with, what Jesus himself had to deal with when he was on the earth. And he not only talks about that historical background in which Christianity was born, but he actually talks about each individual book in the New Testament and what their background was. Why was each book written? What was the date of the writing? Who wrote them? What was the purpose behind it? Why was the book written? Who was it written to? What was the historical situation and occasion for writing? He also does a good job of outlining each book and giving you the big picture, thought, and major themes. Just excellent resource. Highly recommend Tenney's New Testament Survey. This one I won't say as much about just because it's very similar to Tenney's book, but this one's written by Bruce Metzger, the New Testament Background, Growth, and Content. Again, he does very similar things that Tenney does, but Bruce Metzger, excellent scholar, especially on the New Testament. Excellent work here. Highly recommend that one. Also, an introduction to the New Testament. Now, again, remember I said anytime you see the word survey, that means big picture. Well, also, anytime you see the word introduction, that also means big picture. And here's an introduction to the New Testament by Carson and Moo. This one's going to be a little more scholarly, a little harder to read than the other two that I just recommended, but it's not that hard to read. It'll challenge you a little bit more. Maybe a little slower to read, but excellent scholarship here about the New Testament. I know that Zondervan actually puts out an introduction to the Old Testament. Okay, same publisher, probably written by different authors, but you can get the big picture of the Old Testament as well. And with that said, these last two actually are going to talk about the whole Bible. This one's not quite as well known, Don Fleming, but he does a really good job. I like this. I use this a lot. Very, very good with big pictures. Got a lot of great charts, a lot of great tables. A lot of these introduction books do. Those books that I recommended earlier, they're going to have excellent charts as well. And helpful discussion. I know this one calls itself a commentary and not a survey, but it still kind of acts like a survey because it doesn't get into very fine detail. He doesn't really break down verse by verse, but he does a good job of breaking down each book chunk by chunk, right? Section by section, and saying this is the big picture of this section, this is the big picture of this section, and just great introductory material for each book. And the last one is this one, by Haley's Bible Handbook. Highly recommend this. It's again about the whole Bible, big picture, and I don't particularly recommend this version. They actually have a deluxe version, which looks great. It's based on the NIV translation, but it's a deluxe version. It's white in color and it's a lot bigger, and the pages are colored, and so it's just it gives you more of an interactive feel when you're reading it. This one's just kind of black and white, and no real color going on here, and it's kind of small, as you can see. But the deluxe one's going to be much more pleasant to read. And I hope that that's helpful. The understanding the big picture is crucial for interpretation, and I'm actually going to talk about in the next video a practical example of why the big picture is so helpful. So, Lord willing, I'll see you then.